Most relationships end exactly like that cliff. We are conditioned to look for the big things, the infidelity, the massive lies, the shouting matches. We think as long as we aren't fighting in the streets, we are fine. But fine is the most dangerous word in a relationship. While you are busy being fine, the small waves of neglect, the tiny droplets of unexpressed hurt, and the microscopic layers of boredom are washing away your foundation. This is the most eye-opening truth about love. Relationships don't die because the fire goes out. They die because we stop putting wood on the fire. We get comfortable. We trade intimacy for logistics. We stop being partners and start being co-managers of a household. If you've ever sat at dinner with your partner and realized you have nothing to say to them except what time the kids need to be picked up or what's on the grocery list, you are already in the danger zone. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the mirror. I'm going to reveal the specific, common behaviors that are currently acting as those waves eating away at your cliff. You might be doing them right now without even knowing it. If you stay until the end, I will give you the rebuilding tools that can turn a crumbling foundation back into a sanctuary. This isn't just a talk about what goes wrong. It is a roadmap to making things right. If you want to stop the drift and rediscover why you fell in love in the first place, you cannot afford to look away from this. We aren't just talking about your relationship. We are talking about the quality of your life. Because at the end of the day, the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your existence. Let's look at the truth together. Relationships are the most beautiful gardens we will ever plant. But most of us spend our time focused on the flowers while ignoring the weeds. We think that as long as the flowers look pretty on Instagram, the garden is healthy. But beneath the surface, there are behaviors, silent, common, and toxic, that are suffocating the roots. The first behavior that kills love is assumption. We stop being curious. When you first met, you were an explorer. You asked about their childhood, their fears, their dreams. But after 5 years or 10, we think we know them. We stop asking and start assuming. We assume we know what they'll say, how they'll react, and what they want. When you stop being curious, the person across from you stops being a mystery to solve and becomes a habit to tolerate. To save your love, you must remain a student of your partner. The second killer is the scoreboard. Many of us are playing a game of emotional accounting. We think, I did the dishes, so they should do the laundry. Or, I apologized last time, so it's their turn now. Love is not a transaction. When you keep a scoreboard, you aren't on the same team anymore. You are opponents. A relationship is a 100-100 effort, not a 50-50 split. If you are waiting for them to give before you give, you are both going to end up empty-handed. The third is projecting the past. We often punish our current partner for the mistakes of our exes or even our parents. We bring the ghosts of old hurts into new rooms. If you don't heal your own wounds, you will bleed on the person who didn't cut you. You have to recognize when your reaction is about the now and when it's a shadow from the den. The fourth behavior is functional communication. This is when the only thing you talk about is the business of life. Who is paying the bill? Who is driving the car? What are we eating? When the logistics replace the longing, the soul leaves the relationship. You have to protect your us time from your business time. Finally, the most common killer is emotional neglect. It's not about doing something wrong, it's about doing nothing at all. It's the turn away. When your partner shares a small victory or a small fear and you don't look up from your phone, you are casting a vote for divorce. Every ignored moment is a brick in the wall between you. The good news? Walls can be torn down, gardens can be replanted, but it starts with the courage to stop the waves before the cliff falls. Choose to turn toward them today. Choose to listen. Choose to be curious again. Because the love you want is waiting on the other side of the habits you change. The illusion of the big breakup is perhaps the most dangerous myth we believe about love, because it allows us to ignore the slow decay happening right in front of our eyes. We are conditioned by cinema and literature to think that relationships end with a cinematic explosion, a dramatic betrayal, a shouted confession, or a singular moment of catastrophic failure. We wait for these giant red flags to appear before we think our relationship is in trouble. But the truth is far more subtle and far more tragic. Most relationships don't end in flames, they end in silence. They end in the quiet spaces between two people who have simply stopped trying. It is the steady, rhythmic erosion of the foundation, much like a cliffside that appears solid to the naked eye, but is being hollowed out by the tide every single day. This silent killer is the accumulation of every time you chose your phone over eye contact, every time you stayed silent about a small hurt because you didn't want to start an argument, and every time you assumed your partner would always be there regardless of how much effort you put in. We live under the false security that as long as there is no war, there is peace. But peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of connection. You can have a house with no shouting, no slammed doors, and no tears, and yet be living in a graveyard of a relationship. The illusion of the big breakup makes us complacent. It makes us think that we can coast for a while. We stop dating our partners, we stop asking deep questions, and we stop being intentional because we don't see any immediate threat of collapse. But neglect is a slow poison. It is the drift that happens when two people are moving in the same house but on different orbits. One day, you look across the breakfast table and realize you don't actually know the person sitting there anymore. You know their schedule, you know their coffee order, and you know their chores, but you no longer know their soul. You've lost touch with their evolving dreams and their current fears. This happens because we prioritize the logistics of life over the magic of connection. We become co-managers of a household rather than lovers and companions. We think that if the bills are paid and the kids are healthy, the relationship is fine. But a relationship is a living, breathing entity. If it isn't growing, it is dying. There is no middle ground. The big breakup is usually just the final, formal acknowledgement of a death that happened years ago in the small, ignored moments. It's the realization that the interest on your emotional debt has finally exceeded your ability to pay. When we finally reach that point, we are shocked. But if we look back at the trail of tiny neglects, the missed bids for attention, the sighs of frustration that went unaddressed, the nights spent in separate rooms even when you were in the same bed, we see that the end was written in 1,000 small strokes. To fight this illusion, we must treat every small moment as a vital sign. We have to stop waiting for the catastrophe to start the recovery. We must realize that the big things are actually made of the small things. A healthy marriage is built in the mundane seconds of a Tuesday afternoon, not just on anniversaries or after a crisis. If you wait for the storm to fix the roof, you've already waited too long. You have to be the architect of your connection every single day, recognizing that the silence of neglect is far louder than the noise of a fight. Turning toward each other in the quiet moments is the only way to ensure the cliff never collapsed. Lapses. The death of curiosity is a slow and silent tragedy that occurs when we stop being students of our partners and start becoming experts on them. When a relationship is new, curiosity is the oxygen that feeds the flame. We are desperate to know everything: the name of their first pet, the reason they fear the dark, the song that makes them cry, and the dreams they've never told anyone else. In those early days, every conversation is an exploration, a journey into an undiscovered country. But as time passes, we fall into the trap of thinking we have finished the book. We start to believe that because we have lived with someone for 5, 10, or 20 years, we have seen every version of them that exists. This is the moment curiosity dies and assumption takes its place. Assumption is the enemy of intimacy. It is the arrogant belief that we already know what our partner is going to say before they open their mouth. We stop asking, "How are you really feeling today?" And instead we say, "I know you're just stressed because of work." We stop seeking to understand and start seeking to categorize. This shift is devastating because human beings are not static. We are constantly evolving, shifting, and growing. The person you married 5 years ago is not the same person sitting across from you today. They have new fears, new inspirations, and new perspectives shaped by the world around them. When we stop being curious, we essentially tell our partner that they are no longer worth discovering. We lock them in a cage of our own expectations and past memories. This creates a profound sense of loneliness within the relationship. There is nothing lonelier than being with someone who thinks they know you so well that they have stopped looking at you. This death of curiosity often manifests in our daily routines. Conversations become transactional, focusing on schedules, finances, and domestic duties rather than transformational. We stop asking the why and how and settle for the what and when. We no longer wonder what our partner is thinking when they stare out the window, or what part of their soul is currently hurting. We assume their silence is just boredom or tiredness, failing to realize it might be a silent plea for connection. Curiosity is an act of love. It is a way of saying, "I value your internal world enough to want to keep exploring it." Without it, the spark of the relationship begins to dim because the spark is actually just the excitement of discovery. When discovery stops, the relationship becomes a repetitive cycle of the known. To keep love alive, we must realize that a human being is an infinite landscape. You can never truly know someone completely because they are changing every single day. The death of curiosity is a choice we make when we prioritize comfort over connection. We choose the comfort of our assumptions because it's easier than the effort of inquiry. But this ease comes at a heavy price. It leads to a relational autopilot, where two people are physically present but emotionally miles apart. We must intentionally fight this by bringing back the beginner's mind to our love. We must ask questions we think we know the answers to, just to see if the answers have changed. We must listen, not to confirm our existing biases, but to find something new. When we revive curiosity, we give our partner the space to be seen as they are now, not as they were a decade ago. It is the only way to ensure that as we both change, we are changing together rather than drifting into separate worlds. Curiosity is the bridge that spans the gap between two souls. And when we let that bridge crumble, we lose the path back to each other. Would you like me to expand keynote number 3 about the scoreboard trap next? The scoreboard trap is a toxic game of emotional accounting that turns a sacred partnership into a cold, calculated transaction. It begins subtly, often born out of a genuine desire for fairness, but it quickly evolves into a system of surveillance and resentment. We start keeping a mental tally of every chore completed, every sacrifice made, and every favor granted. We tell ourselves that we are just looking for balance, but in reality, we are creating a divide where there should be a bridge. In this mindset, every act of service is no longer a gift of love. It is a debt that must be repaid. We think, I drove the kids to practice 3 times this week, so they owe me a night out. Or, I was the last one to apologize in our last argument, so I'm going to wait until they crawl back to me first. This mental ledger becomes a weapon we use to protect our own ego, ensuring that we never give more than we receive. But the fundamental flaw in the scoreboard trap is that love was never meant to be a 50-50 split. A truly healthy relationship is a 100-100 effort, where both individuals give their all without checking the balance sheet. When you play on the scoreboard, you are no longer on the same team. You have become opponents competing for the title of the most wronged or the most hardworking. You start looking for your partner's failures just so you can feel superior or justified in your own withdrawal. This kills the spirit of generosity that is the lifeblood of intimacy. In a transactional relationship, the focus shifts from "how can I support you" to "what have you done for me lately?" This shift creates a climate of defensiveness. If your partner does something kind, you don't feel grateful, you feel a sense of obligation, as if a new entry has been made on the debt side of your ledger. Conversely, if you do something kind and they don't acknowledge it immediately or reciprocate in the exact way you expected, you feel cheated and bitter. This bitterness acts like a slow-moving poison, eroding the joy of spontaneous affection. We forget that in a relationship, when one person loses, both people lose. If you win an argument by proving your partner is wrong or lazy, you haven't actually won anything. You've just created a loser in the person you are supposed to love the most. The scoreboard trap also ignores the reality that different seasons of life require different levels of support. There will be times when one partner is physically ill, emotionally drained, or overwhelmed by career pressures. And during those times, the other partner must carry 80 or 90% of the load. If you are strictly following a scoreboard, you will resent these periods of imbalance instead of seeing them as opportunities to demonstrate the depth of your commitment. You will feel exploited instead of feeling like a sanctuary for your partner. To break free from this trap, we have to burn the ledger. We have to move from a mindset of contract to a mindset of covenant. A contract is about protecting your interests and ensuring you aren't cheated. A covenant is about a shared vision and an unconditional promise to show up. We must realize that the satisfaction in a relationship comes from the act of giving itself, not from the guaranteed return. When we stop counting, we start connecting. We allow space for grace, for mistakes, and for the beautiful, messy inequality that defines real human connection. By letting go of the need to be even, we finally allow ourselves to be one. Listening versus waiting is the difference between a relationship that feels like a sanctuary and one that feels like a courtroom. In our fast-paced digital world, we have mastered the art of hearing words without actually listening to the soul behind and them. Most of us, when engaged in a conversation with our partner, are not actually listening to understand. We are simply waiting for our turn to speak. We are busy formulating our rebuttal, sharpening our defense, or looking for the logical flaw in their argument so we can win the interaction. While they are sharing their heart, we are mentally scrolling through our own internal ledger of facts and figures, ready to interrupt with a "yes, but" or a "that's not what happened." This behavior creates a profound emotional distance because it tells our partner that their perspective is a problem to be solved or a case to be dismissed rather than a reality to be shared. When we wait to respond instead of listening to understand, we are essentially saying that our internal voice is more important than their external vulnerability. True listening is an act of total presence. It is the willingness to be changed by what the other person is saying. It requires us to set aside our ego, our need to be right, and our desire to fix things immediately. It is about creating a safe space where the other person feels seen, heard, and validated, even if we don't agree with every word they are saying. The waiting mind is anxious and restless. It is focused on the outcome. The listening mind is calm and receptive. It is focused on the connection. When we listen with the intent to understand, we listen for the emotion beneath the words. We look for the fear in their anger, the longing in their silence, and the hope in their frustration. We pay attention to the body language, the tone of voice, and the unspoken pauses. This deep level of listening is what Jay Shetty often refers to as the highest form of love. It is a gift of our most precious resource, our attention. When we stop waiting and start listening, the entire dynamic of an argument shifts. Instead of two people shouting over a fence, it becomes two people sitting on the same side of the table looking at a problem together. We move from "I need you to hear me" to "I want to hear you." This transition requires immense discipline because our survival instincts often push us toward defensiveness. We feel that if we don't correct their wrong version of events right away, we are losing ground. But in a relationship, the facts are often less important than the feelings. If your partner feels neglected, it doesn't matter if you have a list of 10 things you did for them today. Their feeling is their reality, and until that feeling is heard and held, no amount of logic will bridge the gap. Waiting to speak is a form of control, while listening is a form of surrender. By surrendering our need to interrupt, we allow for the golden pause, that brief moment of silence after someone finishes speaking that proves we actually processed what they said. This pause is where intimacy grows. It is the breath that allows the tension to dissipate and the empathy to enter. When we replace our "yes, but" with "tell me more," we open a door that was previously locked by our own impatience. We discover that many of the conflicts we thought were about big issues were actually just about a lack of being heard. By choosing to listen, we stop the cycle of escalation and start the process of healing. We realize that most people don't need a solution as much as they need a witness. Being a witness to your partner's internal world is the most powerful way to sustain a lifelong bond. The power of intentional reconnection is the final and most vital tool in reversing the drift that happens in long-term relationships. Yet it is the one we most often leave to chance. We mistakenly believe that connection is a feeling that should just happen naturally if we are with the right person. But the truth is that connection is a practice that must be scheduled, protected, and prioritized. In the beginning, reconnection is effortless because the novelty of the person pulls us toward them. But as the years go by and the business of life takes over, the mortgage, the kids, the career, the social obligations, we stop being intentional and start being accidental. We assume that because we are sitting on the same couch or sleeping in the same bed, we are connected. But physical proximity is not emotional intimacy. Intentional reconnection is the conscious decision to stop the autopilot and create a bridge back to your partner's soul. It starts with the small wins, the micro moments of turning toward your partner rather than turning away. When they share a small thought, a funny meme, or a minor worry, and you put down your phone and give them 5 seconds of true eye contact, you are practicing intentional reconnection. You are casting a vote for the relationship. These tiny moments are the building blocks of a secure base, a feeling that even in the chaos of the world, we are seen by our person. Beyond the daily micro moments, intentional reconnection requires us to create sacred spaces that are off limits to the outside world. This means having times where the logistics of life are banned. No talk of bills, no talk of the calendar, no talk of problems. It is about returning to the playfulness and curiosity that defined the early days. We have to be the architects of our own joy. If we wait for the mood to strike us to be romantic or deep, we may wait forever because the stresses of life are designed to kill the mood. Intentionality means doing the work even when you don't feel like it, because you value the result more than the current state of tiredness. It's about understanding the bids for connection that your partner sends out, those subtle signals for attention, affirmation, or help, and choosing to meet them with warmth rather than irritation. When we ignore these bids, we create a connection deficit that eventually leads to the silent erosion we fear. Reconnection also involves the courage to have the uncomfortable conversations before they become impossible ones. It is the practice of checking in, not just on the household, but on each other's internal weather. Asking questions like, "What is one thing I can do this week to make you feel more loved?" Or, "What has been the heaviest thing on your mind lately?" Might feel formal or even awkward at first, but it is the only way to ensure you are growing in the same direction. We have to realize that we are both changing every single day, and if we aren't intentionally getting to know the new versions of our partners, we will eventually become strangers. The power of this practice lies in the realization that love is a verb, not a noun. It is something you do, not something you fall into. By scheduling time for deep conversation, by protecting your rituals of connection, whether that's a morning coffee or a walk before bed, and by choosing to be present even when you are exhausted, you are building a fortress around your relationship. You are deciding that your bond is more important than the distractions of the world. Intentional reconnection is the antidote to neglect. It is the active process of weaving your lives back together every time the world tries to pull them apart. It is the commitment to never let the we be swallowed by the I or the they.